Hello and welcome to On the Record, a debate-style television talk show where Bahamians will find the balanced, true and open debate they've been looking for. One year ago, in an overwhelming victory, the Free National Movement was ushered in a volcanic victory of 35 seats to 4 over the Progressive Liberal Party. As the country watched almost in shock, the new and mostly novice FNM government led by the Honourable Hubert Minnis took office and began its work. Since then, there have been bumps, bruises and even black eyes, but the Minnis administration continues to plow on. There has been much ado made about the way in which the Minnis administration operates, but on the flip side, many voters admit they would rather wait on this administration to iron out its kinks and return to the PLP, at least for now. Whatever the case, the Minnis administration is to hold office for the next 4 years, and we will just have to wait and see what happens. Tonight, we're going to go over the FNM's accomplishments and missteps over the period of the first year of governance. Our topic is Tour de Garde of the Minnis administration a year after victory. And representing the Prime Minister of the Bahamas is our guest for this evening, the Minister of Education, the Honourable Jeffrey Lloyd. It's all on the record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer, and we're back in a moment.
Are you afraid to swipe your card and you don't like to carry cash? If so, you need checks. Executive Printers can make checks for all your needs. They have laser checks, personal checks, continuous checks, and more. All checks have up to 15 security features, so you know you'll be protected. You can even customize your checks. Come and see one of our experts today, or log on to epbahamas.com for more info.
And welcome back to On the Record. Our topic tonight is Tour de Garde, the Minnis administration a year after victory. And our guest for this evening is the Honourable Jeffrey Lloyd, handpicked by the Prime Minister to replace him in this interview tonight. Welcome to On the Record, sir. We're glad to have you with us tonight.
Thank you.
As we begin this show tonight, though, we're going to take you back to a year ago, May 10th, just hours after the FNM declared victory at the polls.
But the victory is not mine. The victory is yours. This is the people's time, and I am your servant. And I will listen to you, and I will take out your orders. After all, this is your time. At 9 o'clock, at 9 o'clock this evening, the Prime Minister called me. Prime Minister Christie called me, and he conceded and congratulated me and the people on their victory. So long, hey, so long, yeah, so long.
1 year ago, the Free National Movement was ushered in with an overwhelming mandate. A year later, we're now looking back and assessing what has taken place. Not long ago, in a media interview, you gave the government's performance a B+ or B- for its first year in office. How do you justify a grade like that?
The conditions that we met upon coming to office, the work we have done since coming to office, to usher in a transformation of our Bahamian society. we're talking about a reculturation of this country. We're talking about smashing the status quo and giving our people a new sense of identity, a new sense of realization, a new sense of possibility, a new sense of who they are. That we are a wonderful, as Pastor Raymond Wells said on Sunday past, we are a great nation. We prove it all the time. But we are not doing as well as we ought to do and we could do. And this is why there's this anxiety, this dissatisfaction. It's an organic, deep sense of not quite satisfied with who and what we are and what we can become on a consistent, sustained, pervasive basis. But we also have to be honest, Jerome, and we have to accept and recognize that there is, a rot which has taken root in the Bahamian culture, society. For me, it was very explicitly identified, articulated, documented in 2000 thereabouts, when the first National Crime Commission report came out, and 200 plus pages talking about the social conditions of our society. It had been preceded by a consultative youth report, which pretty much identified again this sense of dissonance in our people. And it is simply this, as they said it, and I may not get the words right. We are not so much challenged, beset by a culture of crime as such in the usual sense, but rather a culture of slackness, corruption, and dishonesty.
Do you think that has
So there's an entrenched condition.
right? So do you think
in
that
the
has
society.
sort of precipitated what you described as, I guess, that anxiety and people, how people are
People
feeling
are tired of
there?
it. People are tired of it. In my previous incarnation, facilitating the political view on Cable Bahamas and my many radio shows over the years, people are tired of it. They want better. They demand better. Come on, why? A young lady, I can't forget this. A young lady was on the Political Review and said, Mr. Lloyd, why does it have to be so complicated? Why does it take so long to get the simplest things done? In my later practice as a lawyer, I started to do more of the financial services and deal with the external clients of our country, and it was the same complaint. I mean, come on, guys, you're wonderful people. You're phenomenal. You're very talented. And why is it taking so long to get the simplest things done? And you are.
But people ask that of the government. They ask every day, why is it taking so long for change to happen when you came in with this mantra of change, and it's the people's time, and as you would have heard the Prime Minister say, it's your time. And so people are looking a year later and saying, well, where are all these sweeping changes that you promised us?
Those changes are underway. And because the deep nature of entrenched circumstances that we met, it's going to take time. We have said this from day one.
Okay. Well, we'll get into a lot of the transformation, but I want to go down topic by topic. I want to start, though, with talking a bit about the economy, because that's usually what people look to first. Prime Minister recently said at the opening of the CEO Networks conference, the Bahamian economy is set to grow by about 2% during the course of this year, representing what he says could signal the best growth in 10 years. In that same speech, though, he admitted that more must be done to boost jobs and opportunity. He went on to say that the Bahamas is better off today than a year ago. How do you qualify those statements?
Well, you qualify it because over 1,200 jobs have been created by our Jobs in the Park program. We qualify it because now Bahama is up and running, and it's at significant occupancy, and a host of opportunities have been created in that respect for hospitality workers. Atlantis is saying virtually the same thing. There is now coming across the table of our cabinet the many different proposals for job creation opportunities in the Bahamas. We review them on a bi-weekly basis. There is proposed by the IMF that this economy is going to grow by 2.5% this year. Recently, in a report that was carried in the Daily, I think the Tribune, it referred to the fact that the Bahamas is turning its corner on an economic basis.
Yeah, the IMF has
now,
said we've
put
turned
that
the
in the
corner.
context. Put that in the context of a society that has not grown beyond 1.5% in the last 10 years. 10 years. Right? In fact, in 2009, we retracted by almost 5%. in the circumstances that are well known. Put that in context in the fact that there were people who were complaining and investors who advised us that they had decided against investing in the Bahamas because of the poor levels of administration, financial and otherwise, that had been, met by them in this society, the ease of doing business and a host of things. And those very same investors coming back to the table and wishing and proposing to invest in our country. So there's much, again, let's be fair in terms of the circumstances in which we found ourselves on May the 10th, 2017. You're talking about a society that had suffered 4 downgrades. You're talking about a society that was heading to a disaster if something corrective and urgent had not taken place. And now you're talking about an international community that is expressing hopefulness. We're not out of the woods by a long shot. There's a lot yet to be done, and people have to understand that, and there needs to be the exercise of some patience. We would like to do far more than we are probably presently doing, but when you meet the circumstance that you meet, you have to understand that it takes time in order to address these very serious challenges that we have in our society across the board.
2 things I want to sort of combine. One having to do with Bahama. This government, by no stretch of the imagination, in opposition, was really no supporter of the project, and had spoken, Prime Minister himself at the time, spoken out against it, etc., and the circumstances surrounding it. One. But also, I think what is concerning a lot of people is since coming to office, the government has borrowed more than $1 billion. National debt exceeded $7 billion at the end of 2017. That leaves a lot of people uneasy.
I can understand that. It leaves us uneasy. But again, let's look at the context and the circumstances as explained yesterday by the Minister of Finance. On day one, $400 million in unpaid bills met this government. On day one, $400 million in unpaid bills. Now you would say, okay, that's in the drawer, that's on the table, that's in files. Okay, we got that.
You almost accept that in coming to government. You're going to meet some things in place. That's your job.
But you would also think that on day one, that would essentially be the end of it. That there would be no more surprises in terms of how much unpaid bills that you would have. In fact, all the way up to October of last year, according to the Deputy Prime Minister, you're meeting with yet request demands by vendors for bills that you never even knew about. As a matter of fact, in the Ministry of Education, up to March of this year, I am confronted by vendors who say that this government, meaning us, of course, owe X amount of dollars for, commitments that were made previously. Nothing new to me. Where did this come from? So listen again. Let's put things in context. Let's be fair. All right. So you're meeting with that day one, no problem. There are also loans that come due. Again, the Deputy Prime Minister speaks about that we don't have the money to pay. We simply don't. $750 million worth that we have to go out and borrow. That's 750. You're talking now about 400 plus 750. Again, don't forget these ones that are surprising to us. And then there is the projection that in this year, 2017-2018, the year of a PLP's budget, there's an anticipated shortfall of some $322 million this year. All right. So from day one, you're met with a circumstance that, demands of you, a response, financial response that you're simply not capable of. So you're going to do one or two things. Either you're going to borrow it in order to meet those obligations, which of course we did, $1.4 billion, or you're going to have to raise taxes. Well, nobody has an appetite for raising taxes.
I just have one question though. 8, 9, 10 months into office, who would have been responsible for alerting yourself and other ministers that these bills exist? Obviously, somebody in these ministries must have had sight of what was happening. Why is it that months later you're just finding out that the government owes this kind of money? I would have thought that would be somebody's responsibility to say, Minister, day one, these are all the people we owe.
Well, somebody should have known, but they didn't. And the point is, you have many instances, unfortunately, I speak for the Ministry of Education, when commitments are made orally, no documentation.
Really?
That's orally, or you've got
You're committing government's money by word of mouth?
I can tell you only the circumstances that we met. All right? So again, when you put all of this in context, Mr. Sawyer, and when you recognize what you meet on day one, I mean, slapping you wide in the face, you recognize that you're in for a serious challenge. And of course, you get to work to deal with it. I mean, you know, we came with a budget. We came with our budget presentation. We'd identify what needs to happen, and we are working.
But one of the criticisms
we're doing well enough.
One of the criticisms levied by the public and the opposition too is that you continue to talk about what the PLP would have done or what you would have met in place, and the kickback always is, but you know, you're in charge. This is you. You are in control. So why do we keep having to hear about what the PLP did or didn't do?
I'm not really that interested as such in what the PLP did or didn't do. On May 10th, the Bahamian people elected the Free National Movement to be the government of the Bahamas. We are a government of accountability, and it is our responsibility to tell you what it is. It isn't pretty. It's not painless. It has some challenges in terms of our appetite to absorb it. But this is what it is. As we say here in the Bahamas, it is what it is. Now, if we didn't tell you that, okay, that would be another story, all right? It's our responsibility to say, hey, listen, Mr. Bahamian people and Mrs. Bahamian and Miss Bahamian people, here's what it is. These are the circumstances we met upon coming to office. This is what you may not have been told by the previous administration. And listen, we are not here to continue to harp on that. This is what it is, and this is what we are going to do about it, which is what we are doing.
Refreshing to hear. Now, we'll move a little bit forward now to governance itself and what some have, I'm going to use the words of PLP Senator Fred Mitchell, cracks in the morale or cracks in the program, speaking now to the government and cabinet itself. Ellsworth Johnson criticizing the delay of the appointment of a Chief Justice, Frederick McAlpine, continuing to be defiant, firing of a Reese Chipman from the Antiquities and Monuments Corporation, even after Prime Minister would have said on the anniversary service that, or admonished party members not to attack the government publicly as it would prop up the opposition. But you have members, and what it appears to us on the outside is almost like a break in the ranks, or if I could use the term by the PLP senator, cracks in the morale or cracks in the program.
I wonder why that is such a big story. You know, when members of the former administration would criticize one another, I could remember the former Attorney General, my beloved friend, Honorable Alison Maynard Gibson, making, critical references to her colleagues, in the last...
But I think it concerns people so early on in the administration, within a year.
But why does that suggest that there's some kind of, crack in the armor of the unity of the Free National Movement? There's no crack. I don't observe any dissension within the ranks of the Free National Movement whatsoever. And Mr. Johnson spoke out eloquently in asking for forgiveness for, as he would describe it, misspeaking. Mr. McAlpine makes the decision that he makes, and God be glory. Listen, we have always said that the Free National Movement is a big tent. There's no difficulty in us accepting justifiable, what you might call criticism, analysis, evaluations from anybody, including our own members. Some in the party would prefer that the matter, if there is a discontent with a particular issue, be brought first to the party and before it is,
But that doesn't
so to speak.
Weaken the image publicly?
No, why? It is healthy, in my estimation. We are a party of diverse personalities and characters. This is no one cookie cutter. I'm different from Denisio Diaghilev, the Honorable Minister of Tourism. So what? I mean, there is wonder, in my mind, greatness in having that diversity that can coagulate itself into a unified focus and vision.
So at the end of the day, you said this would all be healthy for democracy.
We are committed to making life better for the Bahamas and the Bahamian people. We are servants of the people, the Prime Minister said it, and we are privileged to be so. There's no aggrandizement that we seek to ourselves. I am in my office virtually 7 days a week, beginning at early time, 7 o'clock in the morning, 7:30 in the morning until 8, 9 o'clock at night. Privileged to serve our people, but there are challenges. And let's not put our head in the sand and think otherwise. There are serious, entrenched, decades-long challenges in our country that we are putting our efforts to.
A recent poll by Public Domain indicated that the FNM's approval rating had dipped significantly. I think it was something about 50% or so. Are you concerned that you are losing ground with
No,
others?
not at all. Not at all. I
Why
think
not?
historically, as the Prime Minister indicated, that, early in administrations, governments sometimes have this particular response in the minds of the people, especially in today's environment where people are highly impatient, where people have a great expectation about, again, governments and so on, organizations, not only the government, especially also in, again, the context of people having been dissatisfied for so long and feeling that, this system has to be more responsive. I've said this a number of times in the media. We today live in an environment where people are not satisfied that they've got to wait 2 and 3 weeks for a passport. It's unacceptable. We are not satisfied that you write a letter to any Ministry of Education and so on, and you don't even get a response, much less a response 2 or 3 weeks. It's unacceptable. It's just simply unacceptable. I've been excoriated in the media because, and it's a surprise to me, but it means it is what it is, that you make a demand that people just come to work. If they've got a job, please have mercy. Is that a conversation we are having in 2018? Are you kidding me? I mean, bless my heart.
A very real conversation,
But-
Minister. I agree
But,
with you on
Mr.
that.
Sawyer,
Yes, I
but
agree with
do
you
you
on that.
understand me?
No, I
You and I
understand.
are
Certain conversations,
You and I are members of the
surprised
media. You and
that
I
we
are
have.
members of
No,
the
you're right,
media.
yeah.
And how many times have we probably in our own hearts lamented the quality of journalism in our society?
Not in our hearts, publicly. I've done it on this
And
show.
this is 2018.
Yes.
Mr. Sawyer, you and I were doing this 30 years ago at a quality that, again,
Yes, sir. I think that's a good time for our first break. We are on the Tour de Grand, the Minister Administration's a year after victory. Minister of Education, the Honorable Jeff Lloyd, is my guest. We're back right after this.
Nobody likes corruption. But what do we mean when we say corruption? Only big crimes committed by guys in three-piece suits? Or is it every time we undermine a system to our own personal benefit? If corruption is skirting around the law, does it count if you tip a government official so you don't have to do things the normal way? Or what if you're using tricks and loopholes so that you don't have to pay full price of customs? There are tons of things that seem small but make life harder for everyone, even if you don't see it right away. Luckily, no one likes corruption.
Brought to you by Citizens for a Better Bahamas.
Welcome back to More on the Record as we congratulate the Free National Movement as it celebrates its first year in governance. We are discussing Tour de Grand, the Minister Administration, a year after victory with the Minister of Education, the Honorable Jeffrey Lloyd. As the nation waited patiently on election night for former Prime Minister, the Honorable Perry Christie, to concede, he left them to wait some more. Here's what the former Prime Minister had to say when he finally conceded defeat.
I accept full responsibility for our party's defeat in the general election of May 10th, 2017. No, listen to me, please. 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 As your leader, I stand before you as your leader, and I declare that I fully accept the responsibility for the debate.
As Christie returns to private life, many have questioned what's next for the party he has led since 1997. Interim PLP leader Philip Brave Davis says their recent loss calls for a major shift.
We just have to reconnect, we have to rebuild and reconnect to the Bahamian people, have them to let them know who we are, and we have to let them take ownership of this party.
Since that time, the opposition PLP has attempted to regroup itself and has been really on the heels of the FNM and of the government, as the opposition should, and that is its job. But they are two, in many ways, within their own struggles, which we will address further down in the show. But one of the things I want to talk about in this segment, though, Minister, is what the government and party is touting as a major accomplishment. The Minister of National Security announced recently that for the first quarter of the year, murders were on the decline by 45.2%, armed robberies down 31.8%, stolen vehicles down 13%, 102 firearms taken off of the streets, 3,365 rounds of ammunition confiscated. This is what he says. Although early, we have begun to witness positive results in our efforts to reduce crime. Some say crime is not a political issue, but at the end of the day, it is a responsibility of government.
It is, absolutely. And this is the amazing thing I find, again, with the media. God bless their souls. You would think that this reality of a significant, almost unbelievable drop in the murder rate. Let me tell you, I've been on the radio now in the neighborhood of, in the media rather, in the neighborhood of 45 years. In the most recent incarnation, somewhere around 25 or so years being on the radio on a daily basis. There is no subject that I have covered more than the subject of crime, and there is no specificity within that crime discussion that I have not dealt with the issue of murder. As a matter of fact, when you talk to Dr. David Allen, and in my own belief, murder is the penultimate expression of the criminal circumstances of your society. Because it has its finality, as you know. We, of course, have major stories. It's blasted across the headlines about, record murder. PLP in 2012 made that one of the central issues of its campaign, putting up major posters, billboards across the country, 492 murders in 5 years, a record, And yet we have in a quarter a 50% drop in murder, and it has barely a mention in the media. Isn't that absolutely incredible? Here it is, because of the efforts of the Royal Bahamas Police Force and a certain awareness developing in our own Bahamian society that, hey, listen, this social condition cannot continue, that it gets barely a mention in the media in terms of its prominence and so on.
It was, when I found it was below the fold, we call it in the paper, and the majority of it was on the inside of the paper.
Right.
So
These are people who essentially influence the opinions of an electorate, a populace. These are the people who are responsible as, the media of record, the Guardian, the Tribune, and so on, to bring information of relevance and put it in particular context. Barely understood. Isn't that cause for celebration? Giuliani in 1992 came to office in New York as the mayor of New York after David Dinkins and basically cleaned the place up. It's celebrated. It's a big time cover story in Time magazine about the precipitous decline in small crimes as well as in significant crimes in New York City, because now New York is a place that can be safe to work and live again. Barely a mention in the Bahamas. Ah, Lord.
I would also like to speak to something that was recently introduced in the House of Assembly in the form of a white paper, the Over the Hill Community Development Partnership Agreement, which includes things like exemptions and concessions for a number of taxes, fees for businesses, landowners in the inner city areas. This is touted to be really revolutionary for a lot of the Over the Hill areas. The Prime Minister taking a personal interest in it, wanting it to hopefully be a part of his legacy, starting in the Bain and Grantstown area, Centerville, as the first empowerment zone. Other phases, including areas like Gambia and Fox Hill, which I thought was very interesting, because sometimes we don't think of those areas as over the hill. You just think sort of downtown in that area, the Nassau and the Providence, the Nassau area as we would know it. Areas like Fox Hill, Camp Road, even Angliston, St. Barnabas in the out phases. Why is something like this so important, and is it so different from anything that we've tried before? It's
revolutionary in its scope. Yeah. It's revolutionary in its projections, but not necessarily. 1969, 70, I think it was, Arthur Hanna came into Baintown and said the same thing. Basically, that there would be what is described as a regentrification exercise.
What's taken us so long to get to this?
Execution. It isn't we don't have a paucity of ideas in the Bahamas. We've got magnificent, wonderful ideas coming from all sectors of our country. That's not, one coach versus another coach doesn't have necessarily any genius of ideas. It's the team that they have on the floor at the time in terms of execution.
So it sounds great,
Yeah,
but that's always our issue. We have wonderful ideas, but that's execution.
Well, yes,
can it be executed?
It must be. It must be. I just finished telling you about the dissatisfaction that reverberates in the heart of our Bahamian people. They're not going to accept anything less than execution. I say this to my people at the Ministry of Education. Oh yes, we are going to meet these goals. This is no time for any more just simply platitudinous expressions of ideas here and there. No. We have got a system that has not responded effectively and efficiently and productively and proficiently to the needs of our Bahamian children. We are failing them. How can you be satisfied as a ministry with less than 50% graduation rate? Those meeting the minimum standards for graduation. How could you be satisfied with that? How could you be satisfied that there are only two out of every 5 students who take the BGCSE English that pass? That only 1 out of every 5 that take the math that pass. Hello.
So we have an unemployable workforce.
More than 25-30% of your 5-year-olds that come to grade 1 are not ready. How could you be satisfied when there are over 11,000 3-year-olds in this country, according to the Department of Statistics, and you are only meeting 4,000? 8,000 go without any formalized education. And the most critical time for the formalized training in the conditioning of our people, or human beings, period, is the period between 0 and 5. And we are missing a phenomenon.
Minister, where are these children?
Nurseries, at home, in the care of godparents or grandparents, and so on. If you're talking about a social revolution, as you must, if you're talking about real transformation, as you must, as the people deserve and desire and demand, we got to get with it, man. What kind of excuse I can accept that there isn't going to be a transformation in education? Yes, it's going to take time, but when are we going to begin? Right now, and we have.
If I could, just going back to the Overhill Development Partnership, there are people who have expressed concern about the implementation and whether people will take advantage of it, because you're talking about tax-free zones and concessions on duty-free items, etc., coming in. How do we police this to ensure that everyone benefits, and not at the end of the day just the big businesses or the same couple of people who benefit from everything because they're able to skirt the law and do whatever side deals, etc. Because a lot of these things, like I always say, look great on paper, but at the end of the day it's always that small minority that benefits. And or could we be creating a situation where we're pushing the poor out of these areas?
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, what we are doing is empowering people. We're inviting, again, talk about regentrification under Dr. Linda Virgil Roll, who is extraordinary, is spearheading basically this effort and so on. Part of this exercise is widespread consultation with the people of these respective areas. We have talked about consultation in the past and so on. We are now systematizing it. Widespread consultation. So in other words, there must be a buy-in. Okay? Now, Jerome, we can't put police on every corner. We don't have the money to hire all the inspectors that we need. So in a sense, people are going to have to police themselves. And this is how you do it, by being vigilant, okay? And where you see infractions against the code, the regulations, whatever, to report them to the authorities so that they can be. The police always says, their work can never be effective if you don't have a willing and cooperative community. That's why it's so important, and that's what they're doing now at the ground level, to get the community involved, get them to be a participant. You're going to have people who try to take advantage. I don't know how you could avoid that, but then again, just like you say, the enforcement arm of this has got to be, impeccable. And that's what we intend to do. Remember now, Jerome, execution, man.
That's always my gripe, right there. We have great plans. We can plan it and talk it up. When it comes to execution. So I do want to now delve into an issue that has been a thorn and even a growing thorn inside the government, and that is the Oban deal. $5.5 billion deal for an oil refinery project in East Grand Bahama. From the very beginning, there were issues with this, from physically down to the signing and what would have transpired as a result of that. But the outcry that has followed about the environmental impact, right down to the fact that the EIA, this environmental impact assessment, has been delayed. First of all, where are we with this deal? What is happening? It seems like it's gone quiet, and people are saying, well, maybe government trying to back out of it slowly.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to explain. Let me say, in full disclosure, I'm a member of a cabinet subcommittee charged with overseeing this Oban matter. Let me also say, and I've been an observer of the news in this country now for the last 50 years, an intimate observer, participant in the news media, that I have not seen, probably in my memory, any prime minister coming to the House of Assembly, Bahamian people, and admitting that we messed up, all right? And we did, all right? There's no question about it. In terms of our processing of this particular application, first and foremost, we certainly did not follow the law, the Planning and Subdivision Act. It's very clear. We didn't follow the law, and obviously we had to retreat, right? And the Prime Minister said so in the House of Assembly. Hey, we made mistakes. We are going to do a complete review of this process, all right? And let the proper procedure in law and in policy take place. A subcommittee was formed. We met with the principals without obviously betraying the confidentiality of cabinet. We met with the principals. We laid the cards on the table. They laid their cards on the table. And we say we are going to observe the rules and regulations of this Bahamian society. One of those rules is enshrined in the Planning and Subdivision Act. And there are requirements for that. There must be an environmental impact statement. There must be an environment impact study. That study must be shared with the community to be affected. That community must have real input in whether this project and how this project and so on and so forth, as enshrined by the Privy Council in I think it's the Guana Keys case. No, just not saying, hey, Mr. Sawyer, by the way, we're going to be doing Oban, all right? No, that's not consultation. Real input. That's the process we are going through right now. Those on the other side, the Oban officials, they are going through their process to reevaluate now the position that has been laid by the Bahamian people through its government in terms of this particular process. And they're going to have to make their own decision, and just like we have to make our own decision. When all of the facts have come to the table, and we are now in the process of gathering that, the environmental impact statement, the environmental impact study, the economic impact, the real benefit for the Bahamian, economic and social benefit for the Bahamian people, everything, as the Prime Minister said, is now presently under review, and we are not going to be rushed, because we understand the import of this particular project on any number of fronts, including, of course, the environment. But more than that, the social and economic impact for the benefit of our people in Grand Bahama and the rest of the Bahamian society. We are in that process. We are conducting our meetings and investigations. Those satellite agencies, personnel that are attendant to the particular committee, they are in the process of gathering their data and doing what they're required to do. When it all comes to the table and we, as the committee, evaluate it, we will then make our representation to Cabinet. Cabinet will make its decision. That decision then will be shared with the Bahamian people.
One of the key concerns from the very beginning is that this was an ironclad deal that the government and the people of Bahamas couldn't get out of.
Nonsense. Again, the AG explained that. There's no such thing as cannot get out. There are always implied terms and so on. Now, of course, getting out of it may impose a particular penalty, but by no means. That is not far from
I have asked this on this show several times. Was this really the result of a rush to bring some kind of relief to Grand Bahama?
Well, certainly, listen, Grand Bahama has been in dire economic and, as a result, consequential social straits for too long. Right? As the Prime Minister said, this government...
That's an unarguable fact.
Let's try to do something to help these people. I mean, the stories that I receive and the Cabinet and the government receives about the lives of people there is just really, it's just heartbreaking and so on. No, it's not a rush. Though, yes, we want to get things done for Grand Bahama, for God's sakes.
We're going to use this now as an opportunity to segue into Grand Bahama. GIVC Digital pledged an annual $50 million to triple the workforce, starting with 50 staff, going to 150 staff within 3 years, complement the opening of its office there this month. companies suggesting that Grand Bahama could become the Silicon Valley of the Caribbean in 10 years. This is one of the areas that I know the government has been looking at very closely, and it's touting as a way out or a hand up for Grand Bahama.
Big opportunity.
Is this the beginning of more of this? And one of the concerns is that is the island prepared infrastructurally, socially to deal with a Silicon Valley? I mean, Freeport maybe in terms of its infrastructure, but you've got 8 Mile Rock, West End, East Grand Bahama. Is the island ready?
Mr. Sawyer, we'll get there. Where we are not, we'll get there. I mean, I believe in the evolutionary impulse of our people. We respond. In 1965, we were a seasonal tourist destination. Stafford Sands, bless his late heart, decided that we could be year-round. And then we started, with the circumstance on Paradise Island and the Ambassador and other places. I could remember the Emerald Beach. Yes, we can, and we will. I remember back in the late 60s, this issue about financial services was being touted, and a few persons, thought about this industry and whether we as, Bahamians can manage this. We've got great success stories in this business, and we will do so in technology. The Prime Minister went to Texas and met with a number of investors, one of which is now making an investment in Grand Bahama. In December, I think, of last year, we came to Parliament with a commercial enterprise bill, widely criticized across, the spectrum of Bahamian society. Commercial enterprise zones exist throughout the Caribbean. Jamaica is an example, and the United States of America and countries around the world as a way of stimulating the economy. This is a consequence of that, and we have seen a number of other applications come to us. This particular issue of technology, I don't need to tell you about blockchain and cryptocurrency and the fact that it is now the narrative of the universe today. If we are not on this technology train, technological wave that now sweeps the world, Jerome, we are gone.
We can be left out on the side.
We are gone.
Yes,
and Grand Bahama, specifically and particularly Freeport, is, magnificently poised to jump off. In a couple of months, there's going to be a major technology conference in Grand Bahama.
Again, so we've got to take a break. We're at the midway point in our show. We're talking to the Honorable Jeff Lloyd, Minister of Education, who represents the FNM tonight. Our topic, the Tour de Grand, the Minister's administration a year after victory. Stay with us.
Are you coughing, sneezing, having headaches, respiratory issues, allergies, or itchy skin? Toxic mold may be the problem. Clear Solutions Plus can help. Certified best in the Bahamas, specializing in mold removal, water damage restoration, AC duct cleaning, and more. Call Clear Solutions Plus to schedule an inspection for your home or office at 677-3138 or 427-3138. Open 7 days at the Mount Royal Plaza. Clear Solutions Plus certified mold removal. Visit our website. We are your solution to indoor air pollution.
Welcome back. We are looking at the Minister's administrations a year after victory. My guest tonight is the Minister of Education, the Honorable Jeff Lloyd. As we went into the break, we were looking at really what was happening in Grand Bahama. Grand Bahama gave the Free National Movement a resounding mandate. All 5 seats would have gone to the FNM. And there has been obviously a lot of anxiety for the people there about what is happening and what will happen. Within this year, we've heard of the reopening of the Grand Lucayan Hotel and the Grand Palm Beach acquisition planned, a $2.5 billion development of the former Ginn property in West End on the table. The Deputy Prime Minister a few days ago indicated that the deal for the Grand Lucayan should be wrapping up soon.
Right.
Are you pretty proof positive that these are going to pan out? And
well, they're very positive signs. Let me say that, Jerome. Obviously, I'm not at liberty to discuss and disclose anything further than that. I stand by that which was, stated by the Deputy Prime Minister. they're very, very, very encouraging and positive signs. You know, in the last stages of any negotiations, this is the most sensitive time. This is, as they say, when the real crux of the matter, you know, confronts the parties, and therefore I have nothing more to say than simply we are very encouraged and very hopeful.
Okay, so I'm sure the people of Grand Bahama will be happy to hear that.
Oh, absolutely.
As we are sort of in the Family Islands, I want to stay in that realm a bit. Ragged Island was one of those areas really devastated by the hurricane of last year. And just last week on this very show, Chester Cooper, who's the MP for Ragged Island, Exhuman Ragged Island, also the PLP's deputy leader, contended that very little had been done in respect of the cleanup and restoration in Ragged Island. He says many essential services haven't been restored. I don't mean utilities, but things like they have no nurse, no police. School hadn't reopened. As children who had been displaced as a result of the storm are still attending school elsewhere. Families still separated almost a year out.
Absolutely, and it's unfortunate, but again, we want to do it right, all right? The Prime Minister made the decision that, if you could remember immediately after, you know, there was even not among us, meaning the government, but there was talk in the community about whether we should even rebuild Ragged Island. The community is so small and so forth. Naturally, the government would take note of that sentiment that is being expressed, but certainly not any decision to not, you know, rehabilitate Ragged Island. But it's taking some time. We're going to have, you know, have gotten the plans now almost approved for all manner of government enterprises down there, including the school, the teachers' cottage, community center, the administration building. Those are now pretty much ready now to essentially go to tender after they've been properly costed. You know, the Prime Minister declared that this was going to become somewhat of a laboratory with regard to renewable energy. That is well on its way. I can appreciate the anxiety.
It's taken a long. People are anxious. They want to see.
I can appreciate that. You know, there is naturally in the ministry, unfortunately, of the Ministry of Works, you know, a challenge with resources. I'm talking about technically qualified persons in that ministry to do the myriad of tasks that, talking about capital tasks, that present us on a daily basis. I mean, you got hospitals, you got the clinics, you got schools, I mean, many government buildings. That stretches, unfortunately, you know, they're already thin staff, and they're trying to beef that up as rapidly as possible. At Cabinet, we have just approved a number of, you know, positions that will be being filled by technically capable, qualified Bahamians who are returning home to help out with their government.
Well, I guess I'll wait and see. You know,
but we're on the way. We're on the way. I'm happy to report that we're on the way. We are, you know, the school is being rebuilt. The teachers' cottage is being administration building. The school is going to be, you know, even built to become the community center. It's going to have a assembly hall. It's going to be like a community center, and also good for hurricane, you know, protection center.
Okay. I want to now turn our attention to what is certainly closest to you, and that is education. More recently, one of the headline gripping stories, dozens of people fired from education for non-performance. In your words, they failed to show up for work or failed to perform. These individuals were contractual, whose contracts had expired since last June. On the surface, it looked very harsh. People got let go. At a time like this, they're without jobs.
Well, I wish to say at the very beginning of this segment that when I was asked the question by the reporter, maybe from your station, I made use of words that I now deeply regret. I started by saying, I am happy to report. And naturally, that becomes the headline, and it takes off with the critics you know, suggesting some heartlessness and some uncaring attitude in this minister and this ministry, and it's obviously not true, and I can prove it. But I nevertheless said those words, and it's regrettable, and I most humbly apologize to my Bahamian people, because that certainly is not my intention. I'm not happy to see anybody, you know, be disengaged from their employment. As a matter of fact, to prove that I am not happy, when I came to office in May of 2017, one of the first issues that confronted this new administration was the hundreds of contract workers at the Ministry of Education. And those workers, their contracts were coming to an end June 30th that year, 2017. And we now have a decision to make. Obviously, the contract is ended, so you can now be released because you're not further legally engaged. But that's not fair. I think that these people deserve an opportunity to see if they can be employed in the Ministry of Education. There are areas where we do need qualified staff. And so rather than put them out on the street, and I said this at the time in the House of Assembly, what we are going to do is commence an immediate training program. Because what the complaint was that many of them did not know their jobs, could not do their jobs, but even more importantly, had really bad attitudes in terms of understanding the demands of work, the kind of things you expect from employees, that in fact you do come to work, that in fact you do come to work on time, that when you come to work you do in fact work, that you don't bring with you, a nasty, disrespectful and irresponsible attitude.
I just find it strange that you have to teach people these things.
You have to teach people.
That's another
okay.
show.
And what it means to be a public servant,
Yeah.
that you are here to serve the public, and you must do so with great respect, great charity, and efficiency, and so on. We commenced that training, I can tell you, Mr. Sawyer, at great expense, as you can understand. That's not in the budget, but we have to find the money because we want to save as many of these people's jobs as we can for those who are suitably qualified to be engaged in the ministry. So we did that. About 400 or so showed up. Another couple hundred did not show up. Did not. To the training. Again, don't forget that their contract has ended. Again, don't forget now they obviously don't care or not interested or whatever the case is, so we really have no obligation even now to them. But never mind, got the team together, go and call Jerome Sawyer and see why he didn't come to the training and why he isn't coming to work.
So they ain't coming to work either.
Well, so we go and we make this effort. You would be surprised, maybe not surprised, at the amount of excuses, okay? So here we are now, and here I am, and I accept that I made a mistake in saying the words I did. But here we are having a conversation, Jerome, in 2018 about people coming to work and coming to work on time and doing their job and having a nice attitude about it. I'm just so amazed. I'm so amazed. This is what we are, where we are, this is who we are. Let's deal with it.
One more thing before we go to this final break. At a recent opening of the $4.5 million facility, Hawksbill Hall in Grand Bahama, dormitories housing some 80 students, Deputy Prime Minister reiterated the government's commitment to offer free tuition to students in the country, more particularly the Family Islands. Is that still a reality? Is that going to happen?
Absolutely.
When?
It's happening right now. Any student who qualifies for the University of the Bahamas, be it 5B GCSEs with passes in English, basically go to school for free. For free. Any student who qualifies for BTVI right now, basically go to school.
But the trick is to qualify.
Well,
as something you would have alluded to at the beginning of the show.
Jerome, you and I went to university. You can't get in if you don't qualify.
So, that's a good place for a break. We're going to take our final break right after this. We are in our second season of On the Record, and we thank you, our viewing audience, for allowing us into your homes every Thursday at 8 p.m. We value your opinion, and we want you to be a part of our discussions. So make sure you follow us on Facebook and Instagram and comment on our exciting topics. Remember, it's all on the record. Welcome back to On the Record. This is our final segment. We have been discussing the Minister Administration's first year after victory with the Honourable Jeff Lloyd. He's the Minister responsible for education. For the first time in the history of an independent Bahamas, the citizens are seeing corruption, small and large, addressed publicly. Has this affected the popularity of this government?
Enhanced it.
Really?
Enhanced it. I was privy to a poll conducted by a particular well-respected research group that showed that 7 out of every 10 Bahamians approve of the government, endorses the government, encourages the government stance on corruption. It costs us money. It is affecting our lives. It is holding us back and has held us back for decades. And it needs to be addressed in a forceful and unqualified way. You realize that when you add corruption and when you add slackness and when you add inefficiencies, how much money we are losing in our country, and monies that we need in education to build new schools and upgrade the ones that we have, to provide supplies for our teachers and to put a tablet or a laptop in the hands of our students and our teachers. It's just a real, the Pope calls it the social virus of our age. And he was down in Latin America just recently. The social virus of our age, corruption.
Are we prepared, though, as individuals and as Bahamians, to do what is necessary? Because it's one thing for you to say, yeah, you should prosecute them and get those people who are at the top and those other people who are stealing. But when we begin to do a little bit of self-examination now, and you have to stop sliding a public servant $20 or $50 to get something, you jump in the line, or doing all these kinds of things that we engage in on a daily basis that we don't necessarily see as corruption. That's just the way we do things.
Exactly. And that's the kind of awareness campaign that we are on, to help people understand that this corruption is much more pervasive and entrenched than you realize, and that we are the participants in it. It's not just those that we see in the public profiles. No. Yes, they have a fundamental responsibility, probably much more, grand in their requirement to set an example, since they are in these privileged positions. But all of us are participating in it. I
found it troubling, though, that in the poll that I read in the papers, that the police corruption was at the top.
Well, there you have it.
I found that really unsettling.
It has to be. Think about the guardians of your law and order. The guardians of your law and order, wherever, are now themselves compromised, Mr. Sawyer. Oh, by God. It means the guard is no longer at the chicken coop and the fox can just walk right in.
But do you think that has led, has helped to really compound this crime situation that we faced over the years? Because people know that the police are corrupt.
Well, no, the crime situation, go back to the statement by the National Crime Commissioners in 2000. The crime thing is a manifestation. It's a revelation. It's the product, it's the fruit of a deep, dissonant thinking in our people, that we think we could get away with anything, that we could do what we pretty much please, that we don't have to obey rules and regulations. You see that when we leave these shores and go into another country, particularly the United States.
Yeah, no, we pay attention. We abide by the laws there.
So it shows you that we can. All we have to do, because we know that that's an environment of enforcement.
Yeah.
Boy, we're gonna be obedient. We are going to be in order, because we can't afford to be sanctioned. But here, where we think, anything goes, I could do as I please.
You slackness.
And there is no penalty.
Yeah.
This is what we have. And when you introduce that culture now of responsibility and accountability, and yes, you are going to do what you're required to do, seen as a pariah, as if I really care, but you're seen as a pariah.
Moving forward, the Interception of Communications Bill was used, commonly known as the Spy Bill. It was used as a major talking point against the former administration. A new version of that bill has now come to Parliament. The then opposition called it dangerous, claiming it would be used for political reasons. One of the main areas of contention, as I would have seen it, would have been the listening devices. The PLP now claims that their version gave the power to the judges, but the new version gives the power to the politicians.
Which has been amended. And we accept the opposition's criticism in this respect. It's a very wise and sensible one, and that has been amended. Now it is going to go to the judge, and this is, sensibly where it ought to be. But let me go back to that particular, what you call spy bill, but it isn't. It is the Interception of Communications Bill. The problem with the previous introduction was the time it was introduced, just prior to the election.
It made some people uneasy.
By whom it was introduced. A party that a government had already lost virtually all of its credibility in the minds of the Bahamian people. And the provisions. And it was this. You could have an order placed against you for any offense. Traffic offense, the minor offenses. And we didn't think that that was fair and isn't fair. Those circumstances should only arise when you are considered to be a threat, a real threat to public order and safety. Not because you are charged with domestic violence, against your child or your spouse or something. Not because, you were found to be conducting yourself in a disorderly manner on Bay Street and you get locked up.
Are you speaking out against the politicians?
No. And so we have amended it, and we thank the opposition. We amend it, and we are going to bring it back to Parliament with that amendment when it goes to the committee stage. And I think that they will support it, and they have indicated that they will support it as long as those, very sensible adjustments are made in the bill.
This is a prime example, really, of how government or how the parliamentary process should work.
Yes.
That an opposition's job is to point out these things, but these are the things that the public does not see.
Yes, and it's sensible for you to do so. You are here to be, don't forget now, you are opposition, but you're part of the government. Mm-hmm. You are members of parliament sent there to represent the best interest of the Bahamian people. So you are responsible to assist in advancing the legislation that is going to best help our people. I'll give you an example. It's amazing. Yesterday, the honorable member for these talking about Chester Cooper for Exuma, said that this affordable housing bill was disastrous, but he supported it. Why? When you're talking about providing lots for Bahamians for $20,000, $25,000, $30,000, Jerome, in this environment, where the average piece of property on the property is 100 plus. Mm-hmm. Please, how many of our colleagues here in Cable Bahamas and elsewhere in the public service would not revel at this opportunity to get
I would rather get a piece of property.
75, 80% discount on a piece of property now. We're not talking about car and a bicycle. We're not talking about clothes.
That's 3 or 4 cars. Interesting. As we're about to wrap up, I do want to sort of bring in a bit of a discussion on the opposition. The Prime Minister at the church service recently said that the PLP had violated the public's trust, and many of the same faces from the last administration remain on the front lines of the party. Is, in your estimation, what is it going to take for the PLP to become an option for the Bahamian people again?
I think the Honorable Brave Davis, Philip Davis, said it on the night of the defeat, and the party has got to go through a metamorphosis.
Are they going through that?
I have no idea. That's the PLP. I am the Free National Movement government. I can't speak to them. I can't speak to them. I say this, however, this democracy deserves a strong, vibrant two-party.
Are they a strong opposition, in your opinion?
I respect highly some of the suggestions and some of the criticisms that are made. Legitimate. There's no question about it. Too often it's foolishness, nonsense. Yes, for instance, calling this affordable housing bill disastrous. Disastrous? When you're giving average Bahamian an opportunity to own a piece of the rock, there's no greater investment on earth than in earth itself.
Property.
All right? That kind of stuff. So when you rail, for instance, as my brother and friend whom I have such a high regard for, the Honorable Fred Mitchell, rail against sensible provisions with regard to the way we must change our diet so we don't eat ourselves to death. We are #1 in childhood obesity, way up there in obesity period, hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, all coming from lifestyle choices. You should be on board to encourage that kind of responsible dietary and nutritional habits in our people.
Sir, as we are wrapping up, what should the Bahamian public expect out of this government over the next year, 2, 3 years?
Execution. We are going to execute and deliver on the promises that we made, and we are doing so in the Ministry of Education and the ministries around. We are going to execute, and the Bahamian people deserve it. They demand it. We are going to deliver it. Execution. That's all we preach around the cabinet table. That's all we preach in our various ministries, certainly in my ministry, in the Ministry of Education. My friend, you could have all the best plans on God's green earth, and everybody has them. Nothing counts unless you meet those goals. And every week we have a team meeting, an executive team meeting, every week. Those 5 or 6 goals to do with preschool education and professional development of our teachers and making sure that this education system is 100% digitized in 1 year. That we put another 2,000 or more tablets in the hands of our preschool and primary school. We are asking whether that can be done. It better be done, and it will be done.
Sir, we could not have ended on a better note. Thank you very much for stopping by tonight. We certainly have enjoyed you being here. Please tell the Prime Minister thank you for sending you. Yeah. You know, we asked for him, but he sent a great emissary, so we appreciate you coming by tonight. Certainly have provided a lot of information to us and given us a lot of insight on what has taken place this year thus far and what is to come.
I appreciate it, and thank you. I want to say how much I appreciate you, Jerome, for the work you do, and you continue to uphold the higher and highest standards of our journalistic profession. I want to say a special welcome to our mothers, particularly those in South Beach, my wife and our daughters, and I'm grateful to them for the examples that they set for me to being who they are, and to all mothers in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I also want to pay deep respect to the lives of our soldiers who fell, some years ago on this day. Again, my heartfelt condolences to their family, but God's prayers, graces are still with them. And just thank the people of this country for the confidence they repose in the Free National Movement and our commitment that as your servants we will deliver.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. We're going to end on that note. Certainly, folks, we hope that you have enjoyed tonight's show. Special thanks to tonight's guest, the Honourable Jeffrey Lloyd, my producer, technical staff, and of course you, our audience, for watching us week after week. Be sure and join us for more On the Record, same time, same place next week. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. We'll see you next time.